What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of The Intersection. My name is Navarrow Wright, and my partner in crime today is Jeff Johnson. You'll notice that this is an all testosterone-filled episode of The Intersection because our two co-hosts, Ty is not feeling well, and ElsaM is celebrating a wedding anniversary. So we first want to celebrate that with her. But Jeff, man, what's going on? How's your week been?
It's been crazy. And not just crazy because work is crazy, but crazy in lieu of, I think, all that's going on in the election cycle and all that is happening. I just think that around me, I feel like we're in this alternative universe. When I'm watching the hearings that are happening with the governor of Michigan around Flint, when I'm continuing to watch the election coverage, even when I'm looking at social media, I mean, I feel like we're in an alternative universe that is an open opportunity for a new kind of leadership. And I don't just mean like social justice, walk in the street kind of leadership. I'm talking about who will create new kind of content, who will create new business models for that content, who will provide pragmatic political leadership, who will look at this thing in a different way. And I think that there is just a huge opportunity for folks that traditionally would never be a part of leadership because of access, having the ability to provide leadership. So that's my week, man. I've been looking and thinking and strategizing and connecting and watching, and that's what this last 7 days has been for me.
No, man. I mean, absolutely. I mean, you hit a bunch of things there. I think, my whole thoughts around the whole issue with Flint, Michigan, is that in this day and age of being always on and being always connected, how things can still slip through the cracks, right? How something that significant can occur, and we're not able to do anything about it until it's too late, right? You wonder, we're doing an internet show and we're connecting on all these platforms, but you just think about how many of our people just are disconnected and don't know that that's an outlet to have a voice, right? When you talk about strategizing, how content's distributed, I think we need to strategize about how we enable those audiences to take the power of the channels that already exist. Like nobody thought to turn on Periscope and point it to their brown water and say, hey, this is the water coming out of my faucet. Nobody thought to point it at their arm and say, hey, here's the scales that are growing out of my arm because I have lead in my body. So you're absolutely right. I mean, I think, the question is, what are the strategies that we can put in place to kind of improve that, right? And it's funny, I look at all these things, I've been talking about this stuff for years and it's finally coming to fruition. I mean, just the other day, I don't know if you saw, that Netflix beat out Warner Brothers for a Will Smith movie. They paid the largest amount to date, $90 million for a Will Smith movie. And it's interesting, they're paying $90 million for a movie that may never touch a movie theater, right? So
and simultaneously, I mean, you see Nate Parker coming out of Cannes with the largest amount paid for a film out of the festival ever, and it's not from a major motion picture house.
Absolutely. And so I think the tide is changing, especially when we talk about this political season. We spend so many weeks talking about how bad it is and how surreal it is, but I also think some people need to realize kind of the new strains of opportunity that are being created. 10 years ago, Nate Parker couldn't have done that, right? 5 years ago, Netflix wasn't in a position to beat Warner Brothers in a movie, and Netflix almost beat the other studios for Nate Parker's movie. So if you think about that, if I'm a creative person in the inner city, I gotta like where my opportunities are headed and what's there for me, but we got to make sure that they know about it. But hey, man, since it's the fellas here, man, you've been watching the tournament?
No.
You haven't seen the tournament? Come on, dog.
It's like blasphemous. I have not watched one game. Like literally, I'm relying on my son to be like, Dad, did you see Michigan State got beat. Dad, did you see so and so and so and so? Man, I am so entrenched right now in work that I literally had not wanting to say. I have not seen one game. And what's crazy is I'm not even missing it. Like, I got no team in the tournament this year.
Right.
I'm looking at March Madness from the political perspective. And this crazy shit that I'm watching is all the March Madness I need, man. So not to sidetrack us back into politics, but what I'm hoping for, I think, like I do oftentimes, is just to see some underdog come out and wreck the front runners, the number 1 and the number 2 seeds.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting. You know, every year, probably since I've started working, you know, and not being in college, I've said, you know what? These 2 days, I'm calling out sick, I'm taking off, I'm clearing the schedule, and it never seems to happen. So you find yourself, especially now with, you know, being able to watch the games on your phone, you find yourself getting all these upset alerts. And I tell you, you know, I actually know one of the kids on the Michigan State team, Gavin, and, you know, that was the last one I expected to see, man. But it makes you realize that when it's one and done, it's a whole new scenario, dog. Like, I've been watching, you know, I'm a big fan, you know, being a former college basketball player, of the emotion that goes into it. Guys walking into the gym and thinking, yo, I got this, and cats coming with nothing to lose with that kind of swagger and knocking them off. And yesterday, I mean, it's happened in a bunch of different cases. I mean, you had Yale win their first game, and then they only lost to Duke by, I think, like 8 or 9 points. It was crazy.
Yeah, but you know what, man? I fundamentally, and this may be problematic. You know, y'all beat me up if you want to. The last underdog team I want to see win is Yale. I'm sorry. I'm just not rooting for an Ivy to win the tournament. I know too many people who are in New Haven, Connecticut, that know the havoc that Yale has wreaked within that community.
Right.
I'm sorry. I can't support Yale. You know, give me Butler University. Give me Cuyahoga Community College. But I'm not voting for Yale to win the tournament at all. Sorry to my Yale alumnus. I appreciate y'all for being able to get through it. But I'm just not rooting for the Plantation to win.
Yeah, I mean, well, you ain't got to worry, because Duke did the damage for you and knocked them out. But, you know, I'm sorry to tell you, it's never going to be Hampton or Howard, right? So,
well, you didn't hear me say that. All I'm saying, I'm not going from one extreme to the other. I'm not saying I'm looking for you know, Lemoyne Owens to be in the Final Four. But I just know. Listen, what's interesting is, these are still these moments where there's an opportunity to talk about all the money that is made in March Madness. And I literally believe that I think that we were probably less than 2 years away from seeing a legitimate shift and seeing college athletes getting paid on some level. And I think it'll be a incremental approach, but literally I think that we are about 2 years away from seeing some lawsuit that shifts the precedent and college athletes at least beginning to be compensated for product that's sold that has their number on it.
Yeah, you know, so I have an interesting perspective on this. So, you know, when we were in college, you know, I mean, I played on a Division I team. We got compensated for our meals when we traveled. You know, we never came out of our pocket. And for us, that was great, right? But I think, you know, on one hand, you're absolutely right that these kids are generating millions of dollars for these schools. But at the same time, I mean, look at the shift of the type of cats that are on these teams, right? Like, you know, some part of it, you look at like a Kentucky, or you look at some of these teams, a lot of these guys are one and done. They're really going there to get trained to go in the NBA.
Right.
And the challenge is, you argue about, specifically for Black men, that how many kids are not getting scholarships that would end up staying 4 years and getting a degree because these schools have become these one and done teams and chasing the money, right? And if they have to start paying guys, then it just ups the ante, right? It's going like now you got, you know.
The other piece of that, Navarro, is why does the NCAA have exclusive rights on being the pipeline to the NBA? So there's the ability, you don't see that in baseball. And so there's an ability in basketball to create a farm league that doesn't require you to go to college. You don't see people doing one and done. I'd love to see more brothers getting college degrees, but the system isn't set up for them to graduate at all. It's set up for some coach and some program to make millions of dollars off of them for a year, and then they go on and try to do hoop dreams, and whether they make it or not, the NCAA always wins. Like, no matter what, the NCAA wins, period. And so my thing is, I think, number one, you don't reduce the notion of being a college athlete by compensating somebody for a percentage of the dollars that they help you make. I'm all down for the fact that I was a full ride scholarship athlete. I appreciated not paying my tuition. I appreciated getting food paid for. I wasn't in a revenue sport though. So I'd be damned if every week I see people in a stadium showing up with my number on it and you saying that in no way, shape, or form should I be compensated. They're not wearing just the school's name. They're wearing the number of their favorite player, that player who is selling tickets, that player who is selling product, not seeing any of it. And I think that I would love to see a real sophisticated kind of system whereby there could be compensation that's, number one, based on you being on the team, number two, based on your percentage of sales of product, number three, incentives for if you go to playoffs or a bowl game, but then all that money goes into an interest-bearing account. And if you graduate, you then get that money. If you go pro, you forfeit that money. So ultimately what it's saying is, I was able to use this as an opportunity to go pro, and as a result, I forfeit this money back to the university that gave me the opportunity to go pro. If I don't go pro, here I am having done all of this work and I get no compensation. But I think something's got to give, man, because at the end of the day, these are not regular students. And you and I both know that the schedules of college athletes are not, you go to class more than you prepare for your sport. In fact, most of these systems are designed where your classes are clearly and deliberately secondary to your investment in winning that school a championship.
No, I mean, I agree. I mean, these guys aren't going to see, they're not going to see the inside of a classroom until the end of April. So, you know, when you think about that, I mean, hold on, we got some reverb here, dog. Hold on, something open. Yeah, we got the show rocking in another browser. There we go. So you got guys who haven't seen the inside of a classroom in like a month and a half, and they're not going to see the inside of a classroom until April. So you're absolutely right. They're not set up to be students. I think I'll give you another scenario. There was two twins from Kentucky. I can't remember their names. But they both went out last year in the draft.
Yeah, I know you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about? Neither of them got drafted. And I was watching the D-League game the other day. And this cat's playing in the D-League, right? Now, he left. I think he was a freshman when he left. So the other part of it, the reason why I say I'm of two minds of the money thing, I absolutely agree with you. I think you basically came up with the solution for the NCAA's problem right here in the show. But I think the challenge is right now, because cats are chasing money, and I know why they're chasing money, because they're coming from environments where they're trying to change the financial situation of their entire family. But in that standpoint, this guy is in the D-League. He might be making 80 grand, 90 grand. But that NBA dream is almost dead. Like, he's not, you know, it's going to be a very hard case for him. And now the guy doesn't have education. He's not been prepared. So I'd also like to see, to your point, to take some of those dollars and develop life skills, like teach cats, you know, financial responsibility, teach cats some basic business sense, so that, to your point, they can parlay you know, the value that they had at that college or university to make some money. Like that's the part that, because guys are so money motivated, they're not getting any skills.
But I'm just talking about, but what about the guys who have legitimate raw talent, right? They are the guys that are tearing it up. They're amazing players, but they don't have the academics to go to college. They don't have, they're not being recruited because of their academics or for whatever reason. Does that mean they shouldn't be able to go pro? Because even the worst program wasn't able to manipulate grades and test scores to be able to get them in. Nobody, and the reality is the D League and these other leagues just don't look at all that they are not the number one pipeline for talent. So if you're not coming out of an NCAA program, you're not taken seriously to go into the league. And I think even when you look at folks like LeBron, like I wonder what kind of player LeBron would have been had he actually had a coach before he got to the NBA.
Right.
So it's not even just around the money, and it's not about some of these cats that aren't amazing. Like LeBron is arguably one of the best players in the NBA, but how would he have been had he had a coach? Had he had a coach that could have tapered his emotional game, that could have taken some of the pressure off of him, because he was coaching his first year in Cleveland.
Right.
Mike Brown was the worst damn coach in the history of the NBA, or at least the most overrated coach in the history of the NBA. And what kind of player would LeBron have been if there would have been a farm team that would have given him the ability to tailor his skills, to sharpen who he was emotionally, and the best player in the world, or arguably the best player in the world, could have been even better.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, it trickles all the way down. You know, my son's playing AU now, and these cats don't have, you know, in a lot of cases, they don't have coaches. They have guys who are just shepherding them, you know, for these programs, who are in the NCAA and the sneaker companies. You can see the teams that already have been touched by these programs. And you're right, they're not getting any guidance. I mean, I think Kobe Bryant made a statement like 2 years ago that cats aren't learning basic basketball skills. They're just going in off raw talent, and they're not learning the fundamentals of the game. And you're right. I mean, I would argue that LeBron is borderline coaching now. I think, you know, Tyronn Lue is more his boy than his coach. So I agree with you, man. I think you're absolutely right. But you know, we keep trying to stay away from political topics, man. But I gotta ask you, just because it's been top of mind to me. Donald Trump is talking about he's paying legal fees of the people who will accost protesters at his rallies. Like I don't understand how. I mean, you tell me. You're the political expert. Like, how does this guy not get charges filed on him? But he's basically inciting riots.
Well, and I absolutely agree. I think at some point Trump has to be held accountable for the environment that he's creating. And so there are folks that are now showing up to rallies in order to accost protesters. Like, that is the purpose for which they're showing up. Like, they wouldn't have shown up had they not been given the permission to get there and go ham on whether it's Black Lives Matter or any anti-Trump people. So I agree with you totally and completely. And it's not as if the media is not covering it. But the question is, I don't know how you quantify, and somebody, Courtney, on my Periscope asked, why are protesters showing up knowing what's coming? Well, they're showing up because it's supposed to be America, last time I checked. And they have the First Amendment right to tell somebody that they don't like them. On the flip side, that person does not have the right legally to ensure that those people get beat up. And to your point, Navarro, if he is inciting violence, there is some legal precedent there that he could be charged. The question is, who's charging him? And number two, do they have money long enough to go back and forth with Trump in court?
Yeah, I mean, I saw, I think it was after I read it 2 times, there was a parody article that showed Mayweather in Muslim garb walking through a Trump protest, saying, "I'm just a little old Muslim lady. Why don't you hit me?" And after I read it like the 3rd time, I realized it was a parody ad. But when I saw the comments, like people were hoping that that would happen, right? So like his rallies are no longer about him expressing a specific political agenda. They're about creating chaos, right? And I think what's happening is the larger political parties aren't realizing that that chaos is gaining steam and detracting from the real issues. I mean, dude, you're hard pressed to hear somebody talk about Hillary or Bernie on a newscast. They're talking about this chaos, right? So this guy, at the end of the day, is an entertainer. He's not a viable politician. But some people are being, as you and I know, that some people look at entertainment as real life. So sometimes an entertainer has a better chance of being a elected official than a real life advocate, because entertainment is what sells. So I get more and more nervous with every week that goes by, because he's getting ratings the same way Love and Hip Hop does. And I've seen many a chick walk out with the same outfit they've seen on Love and Hip Hop the next day, thinking that that was supposed to be their guide to getting dressed. So
but Trump has always been about ratings. He's always been a performer, and so it's not a surprise that we see Trump acting this way. I think the surprise is how in many cases we're responding to him and not, I think, being realistic about the fact that he is going to be the Republican nominee, which means he can potentially be president of the United States. And whether we think it's absurd or not is less the issue. The issue is whether you find yourself a Democrat, where you find yourself, call yourself a Republican or not. If you don't want this kind of politics, then there's a hell of a lot of work that has to be done to beat Trump, because there's no candidate in this election on either side of the aisle that is able to engender the level of excitement that Trump is with his entertainment. And because of that, you've got an unexcited electorate who doesn't trust, in many cases, the candidates that are there. And then you got a nutbag that's got the ability to get other nutbags to come out to the polls in droves in the name of reclaiming their country. So I just think we got to get a little bit more serious about this, as opposed, because there's a lot of us who will say it's entertainment. We're looking at it. We're shocked, appalled, awed, amused. But this dude is potentially going to be president of the United States. And I don't know if a lot of us have been able to look beyond the entertainment to be really clear about what that means for us as a country, what it means for our economy, what it means for international relations, what it means for policy, what it means for not just our image as a nation, but what kind of things can get done with a Trump and this kind of Republican Congress. And that scares the hell out of me. So, in the short amount of time that we have left, man, I'm interested in hearing from folks about what's been important to them this week. I had a couple of people on my Periscope talk about what happened on Thursday with the high-speed lead test that came out of Flint. And, I think that it's not just Flint that can benefit from this, but, listen, man, Flint is in many cases the canary, right? Because while there have not been governors that have done what this governor has done to a city as it relates to lead poisoning, people are being impacted by lead all over the country. I mean,
right.
In like Baltimore in particular and other cities, and it's not just lead paint, but water and other abilities to be exposed. I think that people got to start paying attention to the fact that this isn't just about the political issue in Flint of politicians doing this intentionally. There's environmental terrorism that's happening in communities all over the country. And Flint just happens to be the loudest voice, but it's happening all over the country. So, I'm hoping that we see the writing on the wall. And like we said at the beginning of the show, what I really like, though, Navarro, is that there was local leadership in Flint addressing these issues 2 years ago, even though they weren't on social media doing it.
Right.
And so I'm excited about local leaders that were actually doing work, because I go to cities all the time where you got local leaders on Periscope and Twitter talking about work they might do versus actually doing work. And so big up to some of those folks in Flint, man, that were doing work when nobody was watching, when it wasn't on the media, when there was no national story, when Rachel Maddow wasn't covering it, when CNN wasn't talking about it. And they were doing the hardcore basic work. Now, it could have been more people, but the fact was that there were folks 2 years ago before a camera ever showed up that were doing this work. And so while we have this power of media to be able to get out there and talk, sometimes you got cats that talk first.
Right.
And I want to see people that do work first and then talk about that work on social media versus bullshitting on social media. And then when they get off social media, they just go home and drink a beer.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, my thing is to use it as an awareness accelerant.
Yep.
Of real work. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the internet is full of people who just talk to talk. And you know, the other thing, my whole point about leveraging social media is to get people to understand that they don't have to accept their default position. I think, to your point, whether it's lead poisoning in Flint, whether it's things happening in Baltimore, in a lot of cases in the hood, we've established ourselves to accept whatever default position that our local environment creates for us. And I think, if nothing else, social media allows us to tell people, you don't have to accept that default position. And you have a voice, you have an advocacy, which a lot of people just don't think that they have, right? There's some people in some town, there's somebody in some town that you and I don't know about yet that's drinking lead-based water, knows about it, but just like, oh, well, that's what the government gives us. So, that's probably what we're supposed to have. And it sounds crazy for people listening to this, but it's true every day. So my whole thing is, yeah, we got to have people doing the work, but we also got to have people using, because, the thing about Flint, until people started talking about it on the internet and it started getting some type of coverage, no one cared. To your point, they've been out there fighting the fight for 2 years, and now we got every celebrity and their mother taking gallons of water down there, which should have been happening 2 years ago, when there's people there who've been for 2 years drinking lead-based water. So it's got to be a mixture of both, right? And I'm also not a fan, and I know you went down there and did real work, but you probably looked around and saw people who dropped off a 24-pack of water, took a picture for the newspaper and bounced, right? Because some people gravitate, and we've seen this on every major Black issue we've had over the last 2 years, that people jump and then they leave that area without helping them do the real work to cure and heal, which we got to change.
No, I agree. Well, man, we're going to call it a day.
Absolutely.
And the sisters will be back with us next week. I'm really interested in what some of you all would like to talk about. So hit us on Twitter. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about next week. Subscribe to the show. We're really beta testing this and seeing, what this technology looks like for us. So really appreciate you all tuning in. Any last words, Navarro?
No, just keep tuning in. Give us topics. We want to get more people on, get their voice out. If you have an issue you're fighting, if you have a cause you're talking about, reach us out at #TheIntersection. We'll bring you on the show. You can dialogue with us, and let's come back to it next week.
All right. Appreciate you, brother. We'll talk to y'all next week. Thanks for tuning into The Intersection.
God bless you.